Gorgeous. All right, we are now recording, and it is 4:05. I still think a couple people will join us. Um, and before Jessica signs off, I just want to introduce her quickly. Jessica runs West Slope Admin, and she's been helping me set all of this up. Thank you so much, Jessica.
Of course.
All right, we are here for a 6-month series, once per month, to learn from each other. And who knows how this will evolve and what it will turn into. But we're here for a 6-month series to evolve our practices to implement more sustainability in our work, and to actually execute on the things that we all probably already value very much and have at least some level of expertise in. Can you all see my screen right now? Okay, awesome. And I can see all of you. I can't see the chat yet, but Mallory is going to help me manage the chat. Um, all right, a quick overview, and then I'm going to introduce Mallory and myself. We're going to spend kind of a decent amount of time introducing ourselves and each other to one another, because that's really important. The main key of this is, as I mentioned, like to learn from each other and evolve our practices based on what we learn. Um, I'm going to go over some challenges and barriers that I've seen. And then I definitely want to hear from you about the challenges and barriers to implementing these things that you've experienced. Then we're going to talk about some opportunities. I'm going to start pretty high level, talk about why these are opportunities, go into some strategic, like you could call them case studies or just examples of things that I've seen be successful. And we've got a decent amount of time for discussion as well. And Mallory is going to help me moderate it and like make sure that I'm not just talking, and that you all have opportunities to interject questions and comments along the way. um, I'm not organizing this because I feel like I have so much information to that everybody here needs to know. I'm organizing this because I think that we can together collectively learn from each other, and strategies that have worked for us in our individual markets that will spark uh, inspiration in others. And there will be moments where I'll learn, like, oh man, I wish I had been doing that for the past 5 years. um, all right, so I would love to introduce Mallory. She's going to talk a little bit about herself as well, but she's a recent U of I grad in architecture. She's a non-traditional graduate. She's had a previous career in background employee benefits, especially around insurance. She's lived in lots of different places. Right now, she's in Boise, where she was at U of I, and she lived in London for 1 year, which was really fun. She has been helping me a lot over the past couple of months, especially creating educational resources and comparing and contrasting environmental impacts of common versus conventional, but plant based assemblies. And Mallory, would you talk a little bit about both your thesis and why you changed your career?
Yes. Hello. Nice to meet everyone. Yeah, I'm really excited to be here. Like Lindsay was saying, I had quite an interesting career shift, but I actually decided to go to architecture school. It all kind of stemmed from a road trip that I was doing where I stayed with two architects. And it was COVID, and I was kind of reevaluating my life and what it was that I wanted to do. And I've heard of just some projects that those architects were doing just related to sustainability. And I was like, that seems like a really interesting path. I'm interested in kind of nature and animals and that whole symbiotic relationship, which is kind of going off of what my thesis ended up being about. regenerative design and just embracing the full life cycle of natural materials. So I did some work in an internship with avocado waste as a building material, and I did a 4-year National Science Foundation grant that was about 3D printing with wood waste. And something that I kind of recognized is with natural materials, kind of this idea of forcing them to perform in a way that they're not intended to perform. And so I kind of use that as an opportunity to explore my thesis, and it was all related to mycelium and regenerative design and architecture, and that's kind of that interest is what led me to Lindsay. So really happy to be here and great to meet all of you.
Very cool. Thank you. A lot of you know something about me, but some of you don't. Like, I'm excited to meet those of you that I have never met before here. Um, I became an architect specifically because I learned that you could build buildings with natural materials. Um, I grew up in Jackson Hole. I found a very strong connection to nature, and through my design education, my love of materials kind of evolved to along the lines of authenticity in design and how we use materials to create space or structure or experiences. Um, all along the way, I've done both design and construction. Even when I was practicing architecture, I was like, man, I got to get out of the office a little bit away from the computer, and I'd like craft little tiny workshops for myself and my clients' projects where I could do a little bit of work. Um, I had the opportunity to one of my first projects when I was working with Atkin Ocean Shade Architects in Santa Fe was a Pueblo rehabilitation, and that was really life changing. Um, I was the one just learning the work of an architect and had to go out and like actually document the buildings and interact with the people and get bit by a res dog. Um, but seeing the 400-year-old buildings and like chunks of ancient pottery used as aggregate within the adobes was really impactful. And then as well to like through the design process, engaging with their tribal cultural council, they had options for finishing these earthen buildings. Cement plaster was not on the table, thank goodness. We knew more by then. Lime plaster, a lime and earth combo plaster, and earth plaster were the options. And the cultural council chose earthen plaster. And so with that came the revival of their tradition, a yearly tradition that connected them to each other and the land, just in the form of maintenance. They would, the housing authorities was then tasked with actually reintroducing this tradition and teaching this skill that the Pueblo engaged in once a year. Um, and that's kind of what architecture and building is for me. It's like engaging with the world. Um, I moved back home and I was working on trying to find my own sense of my place in this place. Um, which materials were authentic and which materials were appropriate. And I found uh, a strategy with Love Shack Architecture, and I want to give Lindsay Shack a huge shout out and a lot of credit around this, creating a profitability strategy with high performance, especially, and also starting to engage the conversation about carbon reduction and health. But after 10 years of that, we ran into so many barriers. We had solved some problems, um, and there will be an opportunity probably at some point for me to share that. But I could see that my role as an architect, I wasn't going to be able to fulfill my goals if I just remained in that role. And there are too many barriers within the construction industry, really, like on the construction side of things. So along the way, I kind of like gained as many credentials as I could, and I was always questioning and observing and I wanted to have more impact on more projects. And so I ended up forming Regenerative Building Solutions. And now I do a lot more teaching and consulting, both in the field and over Zoom. Um, and it's really fun, but there's a lot of variety, and I'm not yet sure that it's the best way to it's not the best business model. And now I want to turn the time over to you. I don't think Mallory's here with us, but Mark, can I just call each of you out? And I'd love for you to spend at least a minute talking a little bit about your background. And I have some prompts for you that you can throw out the window or you can use. Uh, where are they? I can't find my screen. Okay, the first one is why you ended up in the career that you're in right now and what kinds of projects you work on. Yours might be a little, I don't know your background, Mark, um, other than where you're working right now, and how many people you work with and where you're located. You're muted.
Got it, got it. Thanks. So background to start with, worked job sites as a youth. Um, my entire family is in material supply and construction, and so there was always an extra hand needed. Um, I've graduated from every form of construction, starting with shop work to new construction. Most of my career independently was working on existing 100-year-old buildings in Chicago. Uh, so understanding the pre-code complex of those buildings and the code intense requirements of what their updates needed to be. Um, Through that facet, in order to do retrofits and weatherization and such. I ended up being material supplier because at that time in my career, there wasn't much of those materials available in our marketplace, despite being a major city. Um, so throughout that journey, I've always had kind of the tips of what was coming next. So I was in the Passive House community, been embraced to be a builder and tradesperson and take on those trainings and move forward. So I've always had little nuggets of materials and teachings come my way. Um, Fast forward, I guess, to now, I'm with a media company that educates people on materials and practices. We're a staff of 20 individuals. And then we have 15 builders and experts around the country that we work with on all of their projects to understand what they use and how they're using it so that more people can learn from this example.
And a lot of people probably know your media company.
I would suspect in the construction, yeah, if I move my beard, it's called The Build Show, run by Matt Reisinger.
Yeah. So we're really honored and grateful that you were joining us, Mark.
We gotta get this information from each of you all and get it to more faces and places.
Yeah. Lindsay, you're next.
Me?
Yeah.
Okay. My name is Lindsay. I'm in the Washington, D.C. area. I started in interior design like in the 90s, like 96, maybe late 90s. And I think by like 2012-ish, I was working in an architecture and design build firm. And then I just continued that work. I think I have just learned, sort of figuring out how to learn, most of my career. So that has actually led me to where I am now, which is currently in architecture school. So I'm a student, and there's something that I really love about being in architecture school. Like I'm addicted to the intense focus, and I'm addicted to like the access to information. But I am a little fatigued by the fact that I feel like I'm being taught to think instead of taught to do. And so that's a struggle for me. I'm taking a year off to sort of educate myself and learn. And one of the things that that interested me, actually, somebody referred me to this channel, to this series, this talk, is an architect who I used to work for, Frank Farkash, and Moon Tower Design Build in Austin, Texas. And so I, sorry, hold on. So in school, like one of the things I found that it was like such a disconnect was I'm being told to model and use practices and materials that are at odds with my expressed beliefs or even with the things that I'm being suggested to pursue. So, and then when I would say like, hey, I don't want to model with foam, like I really want to, learn, how to model with other material. I need to figure that out. And they're like, oh, don't worry about it. It doesn't really matter. In the scheme of things, it doesn't matter. But my belief is that like if you don't make the small decisions every day, you'll never make the sacrifices to make the big decisions. So I was recently at the AIA conference in Boston, and I heard a talk on like the life cycle of materials. Plus, I'm still very much connected to Moon Tower, who now has cross cabin, and I'm just very, very interested in the practicality. I think there's like the sort of theory of architecture, but then there's the practice of architecture, and that's what I'm very interested in. How can we change our communities and then connect together to change the face of architecture so that we're solving the problems of tomorrow with the tools of today? I'm super interested in all that.
Love it. Thank you. Alex, you're next.
Hi there, I'm Alex Sexsmith. I'm an architect in Tucson, Arizona, and I've just crossed over the 20-year mark, and I've practiced for uh, both big and small corporate firms and smaller boutique design-focused firms in Los Angeles for about 15 years. I did a little bit of time in Beijing, China. I worked for an artist there, and also spent a semester in Japan during grad school. So um, I think Japan was maybe the first time that I saw like bamboo nails and cypress bark roofs and yeah, amazing craftsmanship on a totally different level than what we were used to in the U.S. And Lindsay, thinking about your comments about what do I actually make the the building or the actual designs with in architecture school. I remember the first time our class was allowed to graduate from using museum board and foam core to using acrylic. And we had no idea that it was toxic. And a bunch of people went down into the model shop and started sanding it. And one of my friends got so dizzy, he actually went to the hospital. And so that's when so I feel like along the way, I've had little kind of reminders or aha moments like that this is really this is important, and because it typically happens at lower levels of our awareness, it doesn't come right into the center of our screen, and that we pay attention to it with that level of seriousness. um, as for how I got into all of this architecture, I like to tell people I was born on an airplane basically. And so I got to travel around the world and see like the pyramids and the Acropolis and amazing buildings from a very early age. And so I think that can't help but inspire a love of architecture. And by the time I got to high school and then college, I didn't know what to do but architecture. And so I tried to avoid it and then studied art history and architectural history at Northwestern in Chicago, and then went to LA to go to the Southern California Institute of Architecture and study architecture there.
Cool.
They have no focus, or at least at that time, on the importance of materials from a carbon and life cycle perspective or the impact of it. But it's starting to be a part of the discussion there. Like I was literally back there 2 or 3 times in the last year to give talks or be on panels. And this, for me, this journey really just started, I would say, 5 or 6 years ago, when I had to deal with a water damaged house, which meant black mold. And so I really started doing the deep dive on, what makes the healthiest house or what makes the most mold resistant house, and starting to get more diligent about that. And I feel like I'm now on that journey. It's evolving. But I met Lindsay at the Natural Building Alliance, I guess it was 2 years ago, and I gave a talk on hemp lime construction. And that's been the kind of focus of my deep dive for the last few years. But um, right now, for me, in terms of my practice, I call those country doctor projects. They're typically smaller residential projects that I feel good about working on and helping to make happen. But quote, regular residential architecture is what pays the bills. And so trying to, with each project, to make another step to bring those two things together, to really integrate it. And I feel like conversations like this are part of that integration. And I could keep talking, but I'll just leave it there.
Awesome. Thank you. I do just want to acknowledge we should speed up just a little bit. I want, especially for people to get to know each other, and we have 1 hour scheduled. So with that, I'm passing the mic to Jeff.
Thanks, Lindsay. So I might be a little bit of an outlier here. I think I'm more in traditional building materials, we'll say, but um, I definitely want to learn more ways to integrate into more, commercial construction. I do a lot of multifamily residential out of Philadelphia. I'm actually on the developer side now. So I've was our practicing architect for what's called 15 years, and was with one of the kind of preeminent passive house firms in Philadelphia. If you've heard of Bright Common, Jeremy he only does a couple projects a year, and really they're all focused in the Philadelphia area at this moment. But that's really who I kind of studied under to get my passive house credential, and try to apply that both under him and also even the projects I've taken on. While I didn't reach passive house certification, have done a couple of projects at High Performance on the developer side, and so it's still a challenge. I think that I'm the one kind of keeping that project moving in that sense, that like if I wasn't there, a lot of times the path of least resistance prevails. And so that's a little bit of what I'm trying to do, to like fight that good fight, on the developer side, find ways to um, materials that work, but also like if there's a way to get cost estimates for something that is unknown, if I do that work to find out that a material or a product can be done within budget, then there's less resistance to getting it in there, and then it becomes more common in what we do next. So that's a little bit of what I'm trying to do.
Awesome. And you didn't mention that you're pretty well known throughout the nation now because you were a candidate for a board member for AIA.
I was. So I'm very involved in the AIA. Always looking to make more connections, and take these conversations and seeing how I can connect people. I think that's one thing I try to do, is to connect people, and that's why I'm here with Lindsay. I connected here through a campaign to run for the national board, and even though ultimately I was unsuccessful, look, I made a connection here, and I'm on a panel talking.
And I think your platform was really relevant, and I think will be relevant to this conversation. Okay, MFGR. We want to meet all of you, but maybe just give us a overview of your firm and then like super quick about each of you.
So my name is Pete Casanti. I'm the founder of MFGR, based in Bozeman, Montana. MFGR is a design build firm with a wide range and scope. We have full wood shops and metal shops right on the other side of these walls here, and our design studio is right over here. We design and build toilet paper holders all the way up to full historic renovations or houses. Have designed multifamily developments. Yeah, my background's in architecture, went to MSU, have been more on the business side and development over the last few years, and just feel like Yeah, I've read too many articles that just read one this morning about Spain and Portugal having the warmest June of ever recorded and just kind of feeling that urgency to make a difference and just be better. I was always a master fort builder when I was young, and I built really great tree forts and really great things when I was young. And I feel in the grand scheme of things, I've gotten worse throughout my career that I'm now building with worse materials. I'm just doing it, worse than I did when I was 10. And I kind of want to change that cycle. So we're all here and wanting to make a difference. And Bozeman's a fast moving community that wants to pinch every nickel out of it, and we don't want to take that road. We want to find a better way to do things and make a difference. So that's why we're here, and networking is a big part of it, and just knowing that we have other people out there to help us. So you guys can quick just introduction. Did you say yes on everyone
Yeah.
introducing?
Mm-hmm.
Just quick, good.
My name's Nick Triantis. I just grew up around the whole building scene because my dad used to build houses and ended up here looking for a place where I can do a little bit of everything. And I've just grown up around construction and seeing the the waste that comes with it. So this is super interesting for me.
Awesome. Thanks.
Birthday boy.
Sure. My name's Chad. I've been with MFGR for like 4 years or something, and I was big into biking for a long time and started building jumps and everything, and then it was either going mechanical engineering or civil engineering, so I kept playing in the dirt, and so yeah, I worked through a couple of different things there, and now we're here, and then the outdoorsy side of me wants to connect all that nature into building.
Awesome. Thanks.
This string level and worked for construction like 20 years and learn more interest on the to learn more about the QC on the construction side.
Awesome. All right, Lotus, you're up.
Hi everyone. My name is Lotus Garnier. My company is Throughline Partners, and we are also in Bozeman, Montana, just right up the street from MFGR. I've had the pleasure of working with these guys in the past, which is awesome to see you guys here. I met Lindsay at Love Shack Architecture. I worked for Lindsay when I moved back to Bozeman in 2017 and felt super fortunate to be able to return to Bozeman, where I grew up, and work for a firm that was like leading the way and really being like walking the walk in what I was interested and had been trained to do, having gone to school in the Bay Area and working with some really great architects who are at the forefront of sustainability, since the 80s, which was awesome. So I was nervous when I moved back to Montana if I was going to be able to find a job that felt at all aligned to what I wanted to be doing. And so worked with Love Shack for several years and then started Throughline in 2020 to, I think, solve for a lot of Lindsay and I feel the same way of how do you keep your hands dirty and your feet on the ground when you're practicing as an architect. So Throughline Partners, we are also general contractors. Having a 2-year-old has taken me away from that work, but I will get my way back there eventually, because I really believe that if you understand your materials and you understand how to build, which is in my blood and my history, my family legacy, and my past, which I'll leave for other times, that you can design better, and that the frustrations between builders and architects and designers and that's all just absurd and unnecessary and historically situated, and lots of reasons why I don't subscribe to that and don't want to. So we are really focused on constructability, but as a way to leverage design, and that really thinking about those things as more than compatible, as like generative.
Awesome. Raluca, you're muted. Still muted.
Okay, I'll keep it really short. Really short because I can go on. But I was born in Romania, came here when I was 7. Parents made me go to school for pre-med, hated it. So I came to Missoula and studied wildlife biology. I've always loved the outdoors and I always see how things are integrated, everything's connected. Couldn't keep a job for too long because Bush and all of anyway, the presidents kept changing how many people can get hired or anyway, I found myself in architecture school, which is what I always wanted to do because I've always been building things, and there's no sustainability in architecture school. There's no material studies in architecture schools, and I've worked for many firms. None of them believed in it, or if they did, it didn't fit the bottom line. So I started my own thing, and again, I couldn't convince my clients to follow any sustainable building practices. And so I'm here to learn more and to network and to, yeah, learn more about the practices, but also learn how do we sell this to the client. I don't always do cost estimates. I can't even talk to this stuff with the contractors. I'm in Missoula, Montana, by the way. So any and all advice is really welcome. I'm super excited to be here.
Awesome, thank you. Kimber.
Everybody. My name's Kimber. To piggyback actually a bit off Raluca. Well, first of all, I'll let you know. I'm right now currently based in Salt Lake City, and I work for an architecture firm out of Park City. And I'm an architectural designer, not a trained traditional architect. But I did study in my undergrad, like 12 years ago. I was really interested in regenerative design, and I did a certificate program in that. And then since then, my career has drifted away from that, and I've been um, drafting mostly for the past several years, and always have been around architects and engineers who I think in a perfect world want to be building more sustainable, but it is hard to convince your client at the end of the day to go with those building methods. So I'm here to learn and network and just kind of see where regenerative building can fit in the industry now and see what it's like this time in our life.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, that's it. And I'll be moving to Bozeman actually soon, so was curious what the region was like.
Awesome. All right. Snigdha. You're up.
Hi everyone.
Hello.
I am Snigdha and I'm probably the only Canadian here. I'm from Toronto. I studied architecture, but then did a lot of other interiors work, retail, and a lot of other things. Recently moved to Canada, and I was wondering what this part of the world is doing for sustainability, and I was kind of uh, taken aback that everybody is talking about it, but there's not a lot of action going on. And just to quickly sum it up, I am wanting to start something similar where I can, educate more design professionals to be able to take, small steps towards sustainability and understand what stops them, like in terms of behavior, in terms of what is the lack there. So happy to be here and learn from everyone.
Very cool. Thank you. Richard.
Hi everyone, I'm Richard, and I'm based in the Seattle area, Pacific Northwest, and it's nice to see so many faces that I am not familiar with here. So lovely to have new connections and new friends here. For a long time, I supported the Living Future Institute. And that's where actually I met Lindsay, I met Alex there, and maybe a few others have crossed paths with you at ILFI and have registered projects, regenerative projects across the globe, which has been pretty amazing. In my time there at Living Future, the last few years, I hosted the Living Future Conference and got to work on a variety of programming topics, but also working together with sponsors and material manufacturers, those in the material transparency space. And so this life presented me with a pivot. And so this is a good opportunity to just stay connected, to grow that network. Everything I know about the built environment, I learned about Living Future. So I only know regeneration and resilience, and that's like the only way I know how to do this. So I'm excited to continue these kinds of conversations. I like this kind of theme of getting our hands dirty. I've been kind of clean and hands off because I've been helping other people get to their goals. And now is an opportunity for me to get a little dirty in this. So I'm excited when Lindsay and I connected on these kinds of conversations and even to look through the agenda, how amazing those chats are going to be. So lots of love here.
Awesome, thanks. We are at the time that I was planning to start discussion. It's fine. I can fly by the seat of my pants. I'm good at that, I think, for better for worse. Thank you all for that. I do want to acknowledge April McGill, who was on here for a minute. She had a time conflict, and I want her to introduce herself, but she's like she's very much a hemp expert. And she runs Root Down Collective, which is an organization, a nonprofit that does design and teaches workshops in the Southeast out of South Carolina. And Root Down Design, she's an architect and she also offers like pre-designed plans and so much more, I'm sure. I met her when I was in North Carolina working on a natural building project. All right, let's see. We have a couple of different ways in which we could pivot to make the best use of our time. And we could talk about the challenges, although I feel like sometimes just talking about the challenges isn't always the most productive. I think there's a few things about the challenges that are worth acknowledging at least, and that might kind of set a foundation for this. Some of you have mentioned them. A gap between the design and construction realm and deep mistrust, especially in residential design. Small firms, designers are kind of set up for failure. We have an awful lot of responsibility with very little authority over materials, over decisions that get made in the field. And that's probably why some of you have either become developers or designer builders. And then a lack of consumer knowledge. Sometimes I use the analogy of the organic food movement, that they have done a really good job. Like, even if you talk to a kid, they understand that organic food, whether they eat it or not, or buy it or not, or it's in their household, they know that it's a little better for the environment. I guess you could debate that, but it comes with that connotation. It might cost a little bit more, but you get a benefit for it. And I think that that's just completely missing in the industry of construction. Obviously, there are various mechanisms that try to solve that. A big one is with ILFI and their labeling programs and various EPDs and things. Another one of the challenges is like from AIA and from ILFI and from USGBC and from Passive House, like we're inundated all the time with like, you have to be doing best, all these best practices. And it's just like, it's too many things. And we get overwhelmed. And so many of us, it's so easy to just be like, whatever, my clients don't value it. I don't know where to start. I'm not going to do anything. I just need to, like, I'm struggling just to make money, just to make a living. But there are actually a lot of opportunities within the field, like the market of sustainability, for your firm to stand out. Implementing these things will help streamline your processes. It's going to elevate your design, and it's going to help you reestablish or establish your authority within the process. Like, your clients have hired you because of your expertise, not because they want, I mean, okay, when I was getting started, I had clients that, like, I was the first drafts person they could think of, and I took those projects because I had to. But we're not in that moment right now. Like, the market, unless we have a really bad downturn, which we hope we don't, we do have some choice. We can choose who and where and how we want to work. So these are some of the questions that I have asked myself over time. What's the low-hanging fruit? Where can I make the most impact with, like, the least amount of effort? How do we gain that control back? How do we circumvent this unproductive political and cultural opposition? And ultimately, like, how can we serve people? Because if consumers knew what we knew, they would want this. And some of them do. And so I personally, and you all might have your own impressions, and I would love to hear more from you. I personally have found that high performance and low embodied carbon are low hanging fruits. They check all of these boxes, or many of these boxes. There's different aspects of them that you can check by just addressing those two things. And maybe you even just need to pick one to start. Great, that's fine. I am not here to try to tell you that you need to do all of the best practices. I'm here to, like, encourage you to champion the knowledge and expertise that you do have, leverage that, find more opportunities. We'll learn from each other what some of those are. And, like, pick easy things that you can actually manage as a small firm, and then implement them as you go over time. Ideally with a plan and with some goal and progress tracking. So high performance, low carbon, like, they have all these benefits. They're politically neutral. They can be luxury or affordable, depending on your particular messaging. They're marketable. Like, high performance especially is. Health is a little bit harder because there's less consumer awareness. Me, myself, I have chosen to, like, focus on materials in particular and how they can be part of a high performance envelope. And I just recognize, like, they actually solve all of these things. Particular materials do solve all of these things. I'm not saying these materials are right for everybody, but if you're looking for more low-hanging fruit, like, plant-based and mineral-based materials that are a little more raw, check a lot of those boxes. How many of you have a business plan? You don't have to answer that, but most of you probably do, or did at some point in time. Or if you're starting a firm, you might be starting to think about it. And when I was part of starting Love Shack, we didn't consider that we needed a separate sustainability plan. We had the advantage that we were just, like, our firm was based on sustainability, so it was sort of built in from the get-go. I think that was a huge advantage because we didn't have to turn a large ship around that was moving. That being said, we didn't know what we were doing when we first started, and we learned a lot of hard lessons hard way. And there were resources out there that we didn't necessarily know about, and we could have found, and hopefully I can help shed light for some of you on what some of those resources are. But a sustainability action plan or a materials action plan is a thing that can be separate from a business plan, or it can just be integrated right in. It's basically a statement of your values. There's a million different formats that it could look like for your firm. And it's basically you creating goals based on your values that you're then accountable to. And your the benefits should be built into that as well. Like it should help you increase profitability. It should streamline your processes and elevate your design, all of those things. A few examples, I'm not going to go through these. I would like to hear from you all in the time that we have some examples of, let's see, we had a list of questions.
Yeah, I think you asked one of them already.
Good.
As far as the business plan, sustainability action plan, do you feel AIA offers value? How and when? And then the licensure related question, if you feel like your licensure creates value for those of you who are licensed.
So that's kind of a bunch of questions. I'm going to throw one other out there, which is just what are some examples that you have experienced in your own practice where you had a barrier and you were able to just circumvent that barrier or get past it? And if anybody, like, you could respond to anything, any of those questions. Or you could just talk about a particular challenge that you're stuck on and you haven't been able to solve it.
I see Alex wrote in the chat that licensure was really important for you. Did you want to elaborate on that a little bit as to why?
Sure. Yeah, I was a project manager for a pretty well-known firm in LA, and we were going after school projects. And because I wasn't licensed, I would have been like the third on the totem pole. The school reached out and said, "We love your proposal, but you don't have enough licensed professionals." And so that was the first time that I was senior enough at a firm where it actually did make a difference. And then later during COVID, there was a group that reached out to me coming from the Bay Area that was doing business development and marketing, and they were looking for consulting architects, and the only people that they wanted to work with were licensed architects, even though the scope of much of the work didn't actually require having your license, less than 3,000 square feet, wood type 5, wood construction, things like that. But for them, it was a liability thing. I was licensed, I had insurance, so I was taking liability off their plate. So 2 examples.
Lotus and MFGR, could I put you guys on the spot a little bit?
Sure.
And
Yeah,
ask
I
you-
can speak to this a little bit. I, as a builder I was a builder before I was an architect. And it is really hard as a woman, a short woman in the trades, to have a voice. So my strategy was to become a licensed architect so that I had more of a voice. And it's had mixed results. It depends on who I'm talking to. But I do feel like in terms of me being able to have authority and have people value what I'm bringing to the table, that licensure goes a long way. However, I will say now that I'm a licensed architect, my experience as a builder is even more valuable than my license. And then my ability to have the folks that I'm working to like truly get that I get what they're talking about. I really think that like my feeling is that in order to kind of address some of the challenges, Lindsay, that you were pointing to, and I'm sure we all have had, is to have much more of hands-on architectural training in the built trades. My grandfather was a builder, and when I told him I wanted to become an architect, he was a very, very talkative guy, and all he said was, "Learn to build." Like end of conversation. Okay, so that's what I did. Um, yeah, so that's what I have to say to that.
Awesome.
For
Thank
me,
you.
licensure, my path has been a little bit backwards and then I graduated in '09, so architecture was essentially dead and I was building furniture on my back deck. And then it evolved into a fabrication company. It slowly has kind of like, it's been this big kind of overturning glacier. Now it's more of an architecture firm. So I didn't put a lot of value in the license and I never really wanted to as Alex was talking about, like going out and getting those big projects, I wasn't really interested in that. I've always really wanted to build homes for people, and kind of piggyback on what Lotus said. I was really interested in the build component of it. I've always been interested in the materials and how they go together and how they make you feel. So it's never I just haven't, it's the one thing that I want to do, and I just haven't had the ability. I'll probably end up getting my hours under one of my employees at some point, and then doing the test because everything I do is backwards in my life. But it's something. It's a target for me. I just haven't been able to shoot at it yet. So yeah.
You've built a very credible company without that.
Thank you. Yeah, it just hasn't seemed like, but there's something in the last week though, I was interviewing for a job and I'm probably not going to get the job because they asked if I was licensed. I just said no, and it was kind of I could tell it was an important thing for them. And I get from the consumer, the client side of things, it's that credibility stamp. Um, but yeah, I can certainly see the value and all the resources that come with it, but it hasn't become an issue for me. But yeah.
Jeff, what about you? Like, why did you choose to become a developer?
Um, I mean, some of it was coming out of COVID and looking for maybe a more stable form of income. I think that I was working at Brightcom. It was actually with the last architecture firm I worked with, and it was, small projects, and COVID really showed how it was very hand to mouth. And so one disruption could cause a layoff. And so I wasn't necessarily looking for development for that reason, but when I was looking at other options in Philadelphia, there weren't a lot of other architectural firms that I was excited about. And so actually what the developer I landed with was looking for an architect who had a lot of CA experience. And I had done a lot of work in the field, not as a builder, but just kind of like traditional, as the architect, owner's rep, being in the field, understanding how buildings go together from like a traditional standpoint, right? So it's again, it's not, I wasn't swinging hammers, but I knew how that worked, that side worked, and they saw a lot of value in that. So when you talk about people seeing value in building, so even though I wasn't necessarily a builder, I knew how they were built, and that was what put me over the edge for other candidates. And so it was that direction that got me in, but now I'm doing more of we'll say the front end, the entitlements, kind of more on the traditional, how do we put together like an actual set of drawings, do the pricing, but I'm doing a lot of the specifications for that. So when things come along and I get the chance to say, let's try something else different, I get that kind of creative juice and say, yes, will it still be an uphill battle, just as I'm hearing people saying you're talking about convincing your clients, and in many ways I'm still convincing like my clients, like the actual like, kind of the financial side of the firm to go after things, but there's a willingness to do it. Even things like it may sound very, very uh, minor, but even things like getting more developers to like consider solar and going for more certifications, while that is still the opposite end of where we need to be, it is like the small step that helps people break in and realize that there's value in doing this. You can qualify for other uh, better refinance terms. So I think that one of the pathways that I've really found to get, again, more sustainable, at least development, if not necessarily materials, but understand like how you can get it financed and what the benefits are. And that has really made an argument to get people to look, hey, this is worth doing because I can get a return on my investment.
There's an economic argument to be made. The more we can, not in like a power grabbing way or an authoritarian way, but the more we can realize our opportunity as like the overseer of the project and the architect's role, and take back that authority, the more we can just like do what we want to do. And we all, honestly, we're in America. We deserve, I'm entitled, I guess, because I live in America, but I believe that we all deserve to practice whatever work we want to do that's within our values, as long as we're not harming others. And Alex said Joseph Allen's Healthy Buildings. I don't actually know that, but that's a great resource. Thank you for that. I want to wrap up and leave you again with the homework for next time. And let me share my screen again, if I may. So you don't have to do 4 things by August 6th, but by August 6th, I don't want to make people feel uncomfortable, but I would like, I envision this as a discussion series. So I'd love for us to learn from each other 4 things that each of you think you could do within the next month time. You know, they don't need to be extensive. Just identify 4 things you can do that are only going to take you 2 hours to be more sustainable in your business. It can be recycling. Like, it doesn't need to be a lofty goal. If you pick something easy now, I'm sure you'll have an opportunity to wow us with something really game changing the next time. We're not judging each other here. I think we recognize that we're all just like really trying to do things as small firms when it's really, really hard. Any last comments or hopes or shares before we sign off? Great. Thank you all so much for being here, and I can't wait to learn more from you next time. See you in a
All
month.
right. Thank you. All
Yeah.
right. Bye.
Thanks,
Bye,
Lindsay.
everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, Lindsay.
Bye, everybody.